All right, welcome to another deep dive. Today we're tackling how we actually know if our AI agents that are supposed to use computers like humans actually can.
Yeah, it's one thing to say, hey, this AI can browse the web. It's another to actually put it to the test.
We're talking about agents that can truly navigate the web. Click buttons, fill out forms, basically do all the things we do online.
It's a huge area of research because, well, think of the possibilities.
Oh, absolutely. Automating those complex online tasks could be a game changer.
But, and here's the big BUT, how do we even begin to properly evaluate these systems? That's been a real head scratcher.
It's not like we're short on AI benchmarks, right?
Right, we've got tons of benchmarks for all sorts of AI tasks, image recognition, natural language processing, you name it.
But when it comes to these, let's call them web navigating, computer using agents.
That's a mouthful.
It is, but get the point across. The thing is, most of the tests we've had for them have been in these, well, kind of artificial environments.
Like, imagine testing a robot chef, but all the veggies are pre-chopped and the kitchen's spotless.
You get some information, sure, but it's not really the real world.
Exactly. The real world is messy, unpredictable.
And that's where this new data set steps in. The researchers call it, and I love this, small but mighty.
Small but mighty, that's a good one.
It's called BearCUBS. That's BearCUBS, short for benchmark for agents with real-world computer use and browsing skills.
Okay, BearCUBS, I like it. So what's the small part?
It's not a massive data set, not by any stretch. It's 111 carefully designed questions, all about finding specific pieces of information online.
Okay, so focused, but what makes it mighty?
The mighty part is that BearCUBS throws these agents right onto the live web. No simulations, no safety net.
That's the key difference here, isn't it? This deliberate move away from those controlled synthetic environments. We're talking about the wild, wild west of the internet.
Exactly. The internet's constantly changing. Websites update layouts, links break, and there's just so much visual content, interactive stuff.
Videos, embedded games, things a simple text-based AI can't even begin to process.
BearCUBS is built to see how well these agents handle all that real-world chaos.
And it's not just about being on the live web, is it?
No, absolutely not. These questions are crafted to really test the agent's skills. They call them multimodal interactions.
Multimodal meaning what? Like beyond just reading text?
Yeah, think about understanding what's happening in a video, navigating a 3D environment you might find embedded on a site.
Stuff where the agent can't just cheat by looking at the raw code of the web page.
Exactly. Older benchmarks, you could kind of game them if your agent was really good at parsing text. BearCUBS is all about making these agents see and interact.
Just like you or I would, browsing the web naturally.
And to make it crystal clear whether an agent succeeds, each question has a short, very specific answer.
No ambiguity.
None. Plus, each question has a browsing path that humans have validated, like this is the way to find this information.
Okay, so a clear target and a proven route. That gives you a really transparent way to evaluate, to see where the agents are doing well and where they're tripping up.
Now, buckle up, because this is where it gets juicy. The researchers gave these questions to actual humans, just regular folks.
A control group, essentially.
Yeah, exactly. And the average accuracy,
Yeah.
84.7%.
Okay, so pretty darn good.
Really good. So first takeaway, these aren't unsolvable riddles. Humans can generally figure them out.
But the mistakes people made, that's interesting too, right?
Totally. They mostly messed up by overlooking details, maybe not reading the question closely enough, or just not knowing a specific fact that was needed.
Everyday web browsing blunders.
Exactly. So solvable, but not a cakewalk. Now hold that human performance in your mind, because we're about to contrast it with how the AI did.
This is the moment of truth.
It is. And the best computer-using AI agent, OpenAI's operator, only managed about 24.3% accuracy.
That's a big difference.
Huge difference. And key takeaway number 2 for our listeners. Even with all the AI hype, these supposed web experts are still miles away from handling the everyday stuff we do online without a second thought.
It's a good reality check, isn't it?
Oh yeah. Next time someone tells you AI is going to take over the web, remember that number? 24.3%.
So humans are over 80%, AI is at 24%. But there's another twist, right?
Oh, there's always a twist. The overall best performing system was actually OpenAI's deep research.
Deep research, the one that isn't even designed to use a computer the way we're talking about.
The one that's mostly a text-based search whiz, it got 35.1% accuracy.
Okay, how?
It seems to be really good at, making educated guesses on those multimodal questions.
So good at text and decent at faking it on the rest. What does that tell us?
that current computer-using agents have a lot of catching up to do, not just interacting visually, but even the basic reasoning and finding the right information.
And didn't the researchers say something about updating BearCUBS?
Oh yeah, that's important. They plan to regularly update the questions, keep it fresh.
So it doesn't become this stale benchmark where agents just memorize the answers or the questions become irrelevant as websites change?
It's got to stay a living, breathing test. All right, let's zoom in a bit on the research paper itself. Why did they feel BearCBS was even needed?
They lay out the case pretty clearly. They start by pointing out the flaws in what we've been using so far.
Like we talked about, too many simulated environments, some benchmarks showing signs of, like, hitting a ceiling.
Right, like everyone's starting to get perfect scores, but it doesn't translate to the real world.
And a lack of rigorous testing for those truly multimodal abilities.
They felt there was a gaping hole in how we were evaluating these agents. We needed something tougher, something real.
And that's where those criteria for the BearCBS questions come in. Remember those?
They were pretty picky about what made the cut, weren't they?
Oh yeah. Each question had to be short, crystal clear, give just enough info to point to a very specific answer.
And the answers themselves, they had to be super easy to check.
Like one-word answers, unique, no room for debate. They even designed them to be, and I'm quoting here, adversarial to Google search.
Meaning what?
They wanted to test if the agent could actually find information, not just rely on Google's prepackaged answers.
Ah, so no leaning on search engine crutches.
Exactly. And importantly, the answers had to be on public websites, no paywalls, no logins required.
So accessible to anyone, just like the real web. Now, the process of actually creating these questions, it was pretty intense too, right?
They didn't just throw anything in there. A lot of the initial questions came from the researchers themselves, spanning a wide range of topics.
Covering their bases.
For sure. But they also brought in freelancers.
Yeah.
Specifically trained them on how to write good BearCBS questions.
So crowdsourcing, but with quality control.
Yeah, and every single question went through multiple checks by the researchers.
Double checking, triple checking.
Making sure it fit all those criteria, had that human-validated browsing path, everything.
And they went to great lengths to prevent those text-based shortcuts, right?
Oh, yeah. Remember how deep research, the text-based one, did surprisingly well?
Yeah, they actually used it to try and solve the multimodal questions without the visual or interactive elements.
If deep research could crack it just using text, the question was out.
It's like a constant arms race, isn't it? Trying to outsmart the agents, making sure they're actually using the skills you're testing.
And they really hammered on the need for what they call reliable interactions.
Meaning?
The questions often pointed to a very specific source, like a particular sentence in a book mentioned on a website, or a fact buried in a video.
So it wasn't just find this fact, it was find this fact here.
Exactly. Testing if the agent could zero in on the intended information.
And diversity, that was a big focus too, right? Different types of interactions, different websites.
They grouped the questions into text-based and multimodal, like we talked about.
And to get through BearCUBS, you have to visit a whole bunch of different websites, something like 108 unique top-level URLs.
So memorization or specializing in a few sites won't cut it. Now, stepping back a bit, what are the big picture challenges of evaluating these web agents?
The paper highlights a few key ones, and these are things BearCUBS was specifically designed to address.
One is web contamination. And it's not just about the AI's training data, potentially including the test questions themselves. It's about the nature of the web.
Once a benchmark is out there, in theory, the answers to those tricky interactive tasks could end up online as text, right?
Someone could just post a walkthrough, and suddenly the whole point of testing interaction is gone.
That's why those regular BearCUBS updates are so important.
Keep the agents on their toes. Then there's the workaround problem, which deep research kind of demonstrated.
Finding those sneaky text-based ways to answer questions meant for visual or interactive skills.
It's a cat and mouse game, for sure. And honestly, coming up with that diverse set of interaction types, that takes real effort.
You can't just ask any random question that involves browsing. It's got to be specific, and it's got to test the right thing.
And the paper mentions that the evaluation process itself, it's pretty slow going right now.
They did it manually for this study, right?
Yeah, running each question on each agent, recording everything, only stepping in if the agent was totally stuck.
And some of these agents, they take their sweet time, don't they?
Oh, yeah. And many don't have easy ways to, share their thought process. So, yeah, scaling this up is a major hurdle.
So back to those humans for a minute. We know they did pretty well overall, but what about the specifics of their performance?
Well, that 84.7% accuracy, like we said, tells us the questions are doable.
But the kinds of errors they made, that's telling too, right?
Super telling. Most common mistake. Just missing a detail, either in the question or on the web page.
Happens to the best of us.
Right. And sometimes they just didn't know a specific thing the question was asking about. They also had some trouble with those really complex interfaces.
Like those super detailed online maps with a million options.
Exactly. But here's the interesting bit. Most people found the multimodal questions, the ones with games and 3D tours, actually easier than the ones that required, like filtering through tons of data or knowing some really niche fact.
Okay, so humans are good at the multimodal stuff, but the AI struggles, didn't you say?
Big time. But before we get to that, let's lay out who they tested. 5 commercial web agents.
Give us the rundown.
We've got Grok 3 Deep Search, OpenAI Deep Research, Anthropic Computer Use, Convergence AI Proxy, and OpenAI Operator.
A solid lineup.
And they also threw in 4 simpler baselines. GPT-4o and DeepSeek R1, both in their standard zero-shot mode, meaning they just get the question and have to go from there.
Extra help.
And then they also tested them with access to Google Search.
To see if just being a good searcher was enough.
Exactly. And drum roll, please. The results were pretty eye-opening. Those simpler models, even with search, did terribly.
So BearCUBS isn't just testing general knowledge or search skills. It's something more...
For sure. And as for those fancy web agents, well, they all did way worse than humans.
Even though they often found answers faster.
Speed doesn't equal accuracy, sadly.
And wasn't there a pattern with the multimodal questions?
Oh, absolutely. All the agents choked on those. Remember, humans found those relatively straightforward.
But the AI, not so much.
Operator, the best of the bunch, only got like 12.7% accuracy on the multimodal set.
That's rough. So this whole understanding and interacting with visual stuff, that's a major roadblock right now.
It's the roadblock, it seems. And don't forget, Deep Research, the one that's not even a true computer user, it did the best overall.
Still writing on those tech skills?
Pretty much. We got 35.1%, mostly thanks to acing the text-based questions. On the multimodal ones, it basically just guessed.
And got about the same terrible score as the agents designed for that stuff.
I already mentioned much. And the researchers also noticed that a lot of Deep Research's answers seem to come from, well, kind of shady sources.
Like unreliable websites, stuff like that.
Yeah, which raises some big questions about whether we can even trust its answers, even if they're technically right.
It's not just about being right, it's about how you get there. Wasn't there something about how these agents succeed and fail?
Oh yeah, they had this great line. Agents succeed quickly and fail slowly. Basically, if they don't find the answer quickly, they tend to get stuck.
Like they're spinning their wheels?
Totally. They lack that ability to backtrack, try a different approach.
Sounds familiar. So, BearCUBS. What are the big takeaways, the challenges it lays bare?
They list a bunch, but let's hit the key ones. First, they really push for better ways to understand how these agents are making decisions. They call it enhanced interpretability of agent trajectories.
In plain English.
Basically, we need to be able to see their thought process, but in a clear, structured way. All the agents in the study provided some record of what they did.
Like a log of their actions?
Yeah, but the level of detail was all over the place. Some gave every tiny step, others just the main websites they visited.
That inconsistency makes it hard to compare, right?
Totally. And sometimes crucial details are missing. So it's really tough to figure out why one agent succeeded and another failed on the same task.
We need that transparency, that peek under the hood, if we're going to make them better.
And not just for debugging, but for trust, too. If we can't understand how they're thinking, how can we trust their decisions?
Especially when those decisions might have real-world consequences down the line. And remember that whole source credibility thing?
Oh, yeah. Huge issue. Just because an agent spits out an answer and links to a website doesn't mean that website's accurate.
Or even remotely trustworthy.
The study found that even the top agents often used sources that were, well, questionable at best.
So future research, it can't just be about did they get the right answer? It's got to be about where did they get it from?
And is that source legit?
Right. Like, is this medical advice from a real doctor or some random blog post?
Exactly. And then there's the multimodal elephant in the room.
Still can't get over those scores.
Those low scores across the board tell us something big. These agents are either actively avoiding that type of content, or they just don't have the skills to deal with it.
And some even got blocked from accessing certain things, like embedded videos.
So that's another area where future development needs to focus.
Yeah.
Better interaction skills, figuring out how to handle restricted content.
And didn't the researchers say something about the agent's overall strategy?
Oh yeah, they often showed pretty bad planning skills. They'd repeat actions that already failed, like revisiting a page where they couldn't find the info.
Stubborn little things.
Where they'd wander off to completely irrelevant parts of websites.
Wasting time, clicking around aimlessly.
It was kind of painful to watch.
Yeah.
It shows they need better ways to plan their searches, stay focused, and not get bogged down in useless info.
It's like they lack that common sense we take for granted when browsing.
So where does BearCUBS fit into the bigger picture of AI evaluation?
It's definitely a step forward. We're moving from those simple static data sets to these more dynamic, real-world environments.
And the challenges BearCUBS highlights, that web contamination, preventing those workarounds, these aren't new problems in AI, but they're way more complex when you're dealing with the live web.
And the whole idea of computer using agents, it's part of a much bigger trend in AI, isn't it?
Totally. We're seeing AI move beyond just text and images. It's starting to perceive and act in these complex environments, almost like robotics research, but in the digital world.
And with so much visual and interactive content online, this multimodal understanding, it's becoming essential for AI.
Summarize some key points for our listeners.
Yeah.
The live web, it throws curveballs that no simulation can replicate.
It's the ultimate test.
Multimodal reasoning and interaction, still the biggest hurdles.
And just looking at accuracy scores, that's not enough anymore.
We need to know about the reliability of their sources, how efficiently they're working.
And that transparency of their decision-making, that's crucial for both trust and improvement.
So what does all this mean for the average person? Well, those low scores on BearCUBS tell us that these agents aren't ready to take over our web tasks just yet.
Not even close.
If they struggle with focused information seeking, imagine them trying to, handle online shopping or fill out complex forms.
It's a recipe for disaster. They need to get way better at understanding different types of content if they're going to be truly helpful.
And this really highlights the need for better ways to measure their performance, not just accuracy.
Think about source reliability, efficiency, how well they adapt to unexpected changes.
Again, that transparency is key, both for making them better and for us to feel comfortable using them.
Which brings us to our novel notions segment. Given all these challenges BearCUBS has surfaced, here's a thought. What if we started developing what you could call adversarial web environments?
Adversarial, like they're actively working against the AI.
In a way, yeah. Instead of static benchmarks, imagine dynamic online spaces that can adapt to an agent's weaknesses.
So they learn from how the agent messes up and then throw new, even trickier challenges at it.
Exactly. Say an agent always struggles with a certain type of video player or gets lost on a particular website structure.
The environment sees that, and bam, it creates new tests to target those weak points.
It would be this constant back and forth, pushing the agent to learn, adapt, and become more robust.
So not just a fixed set of questions, but a constant learning and evaluation loop.
It could be particularly effective for those multimodal skills and strategic planning.
Forcing them to get really good at dealing with the unexpected, which is kind of the defining feature of the internet.
It's like continuously updated benchmarks, but on steroids.
That's a great analogy. Here's another idea, building on that whole source credibility thing. What if we had a credibility score specifically for web agents?
A score that goes beyond just getting the answer right.
Yeah, factors in the trustworthiness of the sources they're using.
You could train a separate AI to assess websites based on their history, their reputation, how well they cite sources, all that.
So an agent that gets an answer slightly wrong but uses a super reliable source might actually be better than one that gets it exactly right, but from some random, unverified blog.
It addresses that issue head on. It's like giving these agents a built-in fact checker.
Imagine that your AI assistant tells you something and then also tells you how trustworthy the source is. That's powerful stuff.
These are just two potential avenues for research, inspired by BearCUBS, of course.
Purely speculation, but it gets the wheels turning, doesn't it?
It shows how this benchmark is sparking new ideas.
So to wrap up this deep dive, the main takeaway is this. AI web agents are improving, sure, but there's still a long way to go.
We're not at the point of handing over our passwords just yet.
They need to master the real web, not just simulations, and truly understand all types of information.
And benchmarks like BearCUBS, these are vital tools.
They show us exactly where the gaps are and where we need to focus our efforts.
And that leads to a final thought for our listeners. How will AI's ability or inability to truly understand the web shape our future online?
It's a question worth pondering. And if you want to explore this further, we've got a link to the full paper in the description.
Dive in, get those brain gears turning.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.